Okay, welcome everybody to the August 14th Lehigh County Authority Board of Directors meeting. Meeting is being held virtually as well as in the presence of the boardroom here. We have people online on Zoom and also into the boardroom. Let's do a roll call to make sure we have a quorum.
Okay, roll call of the board. Brian Noggle.
Here.
Amir Famili. Ted Williams.
She's out in the parking lot.
Okay.
Yep.
Linda Rosenfeld. Here. Norma Cusick. Kevin Baker. Jeff Morgan.
Here.
Sean Ziller.
Here.
Mark Ramus.
And
Okay.
We saw Amir's joining now. It's coming.
All right, we do have a quorum. Ted's coming in and Amir is coming in if you want
I'll wait.
a minute.
So it's noted that we did start on time.
We did. Amir, are you here?
Yes.
Okay, hi Amir.
Oh, no. Okay. We're doing. Good thing.
For the record, Ted is here.
Okay. We got an ace.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Seven board members.
All right, thank you. All right, let's begin by review of the agenda. Okay, let's do, first of all, the packets were distributed to the board of directors via email as well as hard copy. And there was a revision to the attached agenda, which we also did receive. The only change on that was the addition of the pages for the budget, capital budget. Okay, so now a review of the agenda and meeting for executive session.
So we have no changes to the agenda for today. Just the changes as you noted to the form to include the capital plan. And I am requesting an executive session following the close of the regular meeting to discuss personnel.
Personnel. And will there be any
No decisions.
decisions at that? No, okay, just an update. All right, thank you. Any questions? All right, let's move on then to the approval of the July 24th, 2023 board meeting minutes.
I move the minutes be approved.
And I'll second.
That
Sean?
Sean, okay.
Yeah.
Sean second the motion by Linda. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
You opposed? That's approved. Thank you. This time we open up the floor for public comments on any topics that are not on the agenda. Does anybody wish to say anything?
No, thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Jay. All right, moving on then to action discussion items. We have one under finance and administration, the Allentown Division preliminary 2024 through 2028 capital plan is discussion. It's the digital board packet pages 6 through 74.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have a presentation to share about the capital plan. Also, just want to note that the plan itself was distributed just a little bit late. It is now included in the packet, and Sue Sampson is also working on our website so that it's front and center open for public comments. So people can see it throughout the public comment period, not buried inside the packet, the board packet. So I'll go ahead and get the presentation started. We do have a fair amount of detail to cover today. And this is going to be a multi-part presentation between myself, Chuck Volk, and Ed Klein to cover lots of various aspects of this problem. So again, just to reiterate, today we're presenting the draft Allentown division plan. And so all the projects that and financial performance we're talking about is specific to the Allentown division. We'll talk about suburban division another time. Okay. So, and we do have a couple new board members this year, so wanted to spend just a couple minutes talking about the review and approval process and what it means for Lehigh County Authority. We have a variety of ways, as you know, from being on our board of approving projects and different phases of projects. Just wanted to go through them a little bit step by step. This 5-year capital plan is an annual plan that we present. It's intended to be conceptual. The approval of the board is not an approval of any funding or financial approvals of the projects. It is really conceptual approval of the overall program that we're trying to achieve. The actual approval of the funding comes with the annual budget. So during the annual budget process, we will present the capital budget for that year, which should line up with the projects that are in the capital plan. Maybe with some adjustments as things change, but as projects come and go. But the annual budget is a way to dig a little deeper. And then, of course, at every meeting, we have a bevy of specific project approvals. So even if the project makes it through the capital plan and into the budget, we actually are not authorized to do the project until we bring that project to the board for a specific approval of a design phase or a construction phase. And then the last one I think is important, that if we're going to go out and borrow money for capital financing, typically if we're doing a bond for capital projects, we will list the projects that are funded through that bond. And so there's some commitment to do the projects, we can go out and get money for those projects. So lots of opportunity for the board to approve projects. All that is to say that the capital plan is not about approving the projects, it's more about the conceptual approach.
Just a quick question. So when you start a project and do like a concept study or design or whatever, is there a cost amount that comes to the board or that's decided by you guys? How does that work? So we don't see every single little project, right? Sure.
So there, the projects that fit into the annual category, is that right, Chuck? Those are like lumped together smaller projects that are kind of approved as a lump sum as part of the budget, and we just do those because they're included in the budget. For the larger projects, we are able to do conceptual study type work or investigative work up to a $40,000 internal threshold, and then after $40,000 or a professional service authorization over $40,000 will come to the board.
Thank you.
You want to add anything more to that?
Just a little bit. And sometimes we'll do preliminary engineering just so we can scope out the larger project, and that may be authorized internally first before you guys see it, just so that our consultant has an idea what the basis of design is going to be. Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So not to go off on a tangent, but last month we talked about the strategic plan items that we were hoping to achieve this year. One of them being a review of governance issues and the project thresholds and approval thresholds that we have. That would kind of be rolled to that conversation as well.
But we do put it in the monthly updates and the project updates, like if we're starting with preliminary engineering.
Yeah.
That's usually in the notes.
So the timeline and process for the capital plan is shown here just to give you a look ahead of where we are. We've the staff, Chuck and his team, primarily lots of people across the organization work on putting the plans together through the spring and summer. We're presenting the Allentown division draft plan today. At the next meeting, we'll present the suburban division plan, and that kicks off the public comment period. We do a 30-day public comment period. And then that'll close at the end of September, and we'll ask for board to approve the plan in October. We did shift this schedule to pair up more neatly with the budget schedule. So last year, if you recall, we did this process much earlier in the spring. And then there was a few months lag between the capital plan being approved and budget being developed. And we tried to smush them together a little bit more this year, so that hopefully we'll get pretty close to being able to lift the 2024 capital budget out of the capital plan and plug it right into the budget. With some adjustments, I'm sure, but we'll be a little closer timing wise. And then I've listed some of the entities that we seek public comment from, with the planning commission, the community, city of Allentown, municipalities we serve, and then the public review as well. So I wanted to just give a little bit of the highlights of the plan before we dig into the details, because there's a lot going on with this year's plan, a lot more so than maybe some of our prior presentations. First and foremost, there's a significant increase from last year's 5-year plan to this year's 5-year plan. You can see last year's 5-year plan was $75 million, and this year's plan is presented at $192 million. It's a huge increase. Key drivers, really, if you add up the 4 bullets and under the key drivers, that pretty much tells the whole story. We've included funding for some major initiatives related to lead service line replacements, some treatment upgrades at the water plant for PFAS. We've included a new inflow and infiltration removal program, or 2 of them actually, in the city division, and also kicking off some wet weather capacity projects at Kleins Island wastewater treatment plant. So those 4 categories of projects really make up the major difference between last year's plan and this year's plan. What the plan does in terms of looking at grant funding is we tried to take a somewhat conservative approach, and we included about $33 million worth of grant funding in the plan, which we think might be reasonable, but we're going to ask for a lot more than that. So there's some upside potential related to achieving more on the grant side, but so I think there's some definite potential there that might offset some of the borrowing. And then kind of a look ahead relates to the regional Act 537 planning work that Phil and his team are working on, and the city and all the municipalities. We know that there's significant additional investment that's going to be required. The projects that we're talking about are pretty large interceptor projects and treatment upgrades, both at the pretreatment plant and at Kleins Island. Those projects are not included for the most part in this plan, because they're still a little bit undefined. Also, the 537 process includes a detailed financial analysis. You've authorized Raftellus to work with us on that. Their financial analysis will be dropped into future plans as we kind of roll out what that looks like. So while we're seeing this huge increase in capital spending in this year's plan, next year's plan for the 2025 to 2029 time period is probably going to increase yet again as those projects get rolled in. A lot going on here in Allentown. Okay, so before we move into the project details, just want to stop and see if there's any questions. So Chuck is going to walk us through the project highlights.
Okay, we'll start with Allentown Division Water. These are the annual and the recurring projects. Under annual projects, there's a bunch of different things on the following slide. We'll provide a breakdown of what that consists of. But it's basically asset management related things, yearly things, water main replacements, upgrades of equipment at the filtration plant, SCADA upgrades, that sort of thing. We have our annual indenture improvements. That is driven by the annual indenture report that Arcadis prepares, and that's mostly structural and coatings, just to maintain the level of service and the integrity of the structural facilities. There's our annual water main replacements. That the capital plan represents 2 miles per year of main replacements. Next year, we're consolidating what we call cycle 7 and cycle 8 into one 2-mile project, and then the following year's projects will all be 2 miles per year. And at the bottom, we have master plan studies. That's a requirement of the lease. Every 5 years, we do a master plan of the water treatment plant and related facilities. Here's a breakdown of what comprises the annual water projects. We have development mains and upsizing, new and replacement meters, just routine meter replacements, water filtration plant general improvements, other equipment, that's equipment that distributions and collections needs to do their job, capital management, general system improvements, those are linear improvements like routine water main replacements, reservoir rehab and maintenance, SCADA upgrades, mobile equipment, and relocations required by PennDOT. Here are the large projects listed, starting with the water meter replacement program. We have a fixed base meter reading project toward the tail end of the capital plan. We have water filtration plant filter upgrade project that is in final design right now, and that will be in construction next year and the following year. Big Lehigh intake upgrades, that's for taste and odor issues and replacing a pump and a VFD there so that we can rely on the Big Lehigh in event of an issue with the Little Lehigh source water. Tank and reservoir rehab, that's an annual project to mechanically and structurally rehab our tanks and reservoirs. And lastly, we have a large diameter valve replacement project. The impetus for that, we created that project after the Devonshire break, and we realized that we had some inoperable valves and it was difficult to isolate the system. So the intention of that project is to replace those inoperable or poor condition valves so we can properly isolate parts of the system. Here we have our new projects listed. Liesl mentioned PFAS. So we have a new project to study the PFAS in the source waters for Allentown and design and construct upgrades required to treat the PFAS to remove it. We have water filtration plant influent channel modifications. That is a master plan project. And the problem there is the velocity through the influent channels into the primary sedimentation basins is too slow. And we have material that settles out and our operations has to go in there and it's a confined space and remove the accumulation of debris. So there's going to be a change in the cross section of that channel to increase the velocity. That's what the project is basically about. So that will greatly enhance operations and eliminate that confined space entry. We have a redundant power supply project. This is to bring in a separate feed from a separate substation. Right now, the filtration plant is fed with 2 feeds, but they're from the same PPL substation. So we want to bring in a separate feed from another substation, and this is identified in the master plan. And there's also a regulatory requirement for standby power for resiliency. And lastly, we have lead service line replacement program. This is the biggie on the list. You can see the $55 million over 5 years. So that is driving a lot of the increase in the capital plan cost. And that's driven by regulatory.
I have a question. I've asked this before and I've forgotten the answer. It's happening more and more. The lead service line replacement program includes what? Give me an example of what?
It includes replacement of the public and the private side.
And the private side.
Correct.
Why is that?
Because if we just replace the public side, the private side.
No, I
may still-
understand
may
that.
Still be lead or galvanized.
Yeah, but perhaps a naive question. Isn't that the homeowner's responsibility?
I can answer that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the replacement of the public side is certainly our responsibility. On the private side, there's a regulatory component to it. As we look at what EPA requires for lead service line replacement, we can't get credit for lead service line replacement if the private side is not done. So we can try to force the homeowner to do it, but in a lot of cases, they're just financially not able to. The other component and why we're showing this kind of funding in the plan is that there's current grant funding available, and the grant funding actually specifies that thou shalt do the private side with the grant money. So if we're able to get grant money for the program, then that's a requirement of the grant to do the private side as well.
So does that mean everybody, no matter what their financial capabilities are, gets it done without paying for it? Although they pay for it through their
Under
money.
the scope of a grant funded project, yes.
Okay.
And that's, we're putting these projects in the capital plan, assuming we're going to pursue grant funding for the majority of this work. So whether it's grant funded or partially grant funded, it's all part of a federally funded program. Program that we're required.
Thank you.
Okay, that's a question about the PFAS compliance. So correct me if I'm wrong. I thought Emmaus was throwing around numbers like $25 to $30 million for PFAS work and compliance. So do we not have as serious of an issue? It's a simpler problem we fix with only a $10 million budget, or what's the thinking there?
So the Emmaus
Can I
one,
just say something that I don't think you should characterize exactly how serious or not serious this, because the matter is in litigation. Right, I think, is it?
well, the matter is in litigation. Yeah, the regulatory landscape is also changing, so we don't know 100% how much we need to treat. AJ can talk about this project, but I do want to mention that the Emmaus issue is partly driven by the fact that they have multiple locations where we have everything at the water treatment plant. Emmaus has 5 separate well sources that they're needing to treat, so it's a little bit of a different.
That's what I was asking. Like, what's the scope of work difference?
Yeah, and
That's-
AJ,
Sure, I
can
can-
talk about this
Yeah,
one.
sure. So we put in the 10 million for the Crystal Spring source because of the levels in Crystal Spring. The water filtration plant, the Little Lehigh levels are lower. We also don't have the study results back, and so the studies will guide us as far as what improvements need to be made. That being said, if improvements are needed at the water plant, you will see, significantly higher numbers. It's in the tens of millions of dollars for that. So right now, we're just carrying Crystal Spring treatment, but depending on what the study shows, it may be a lot higher.
All right, thank you. That's what I was interested in.
Okay. Here's a picture of the filters that this project is in design right now to upgrade all 8 filters. This is just, there's a picture of an operating filter on the left, and then when it's down for maintenance, what it looks like. So that project will be bid toward the end of this year and constructed over the next 2 years. This is a picture of the big Lehigh pump station. The number 2 pump and number 2 VFD need to be replaced in order to provide the capacity to replace the Little Lehigh if that would be necessary in an emergency. That's what we need to do to mechanically upgrade the station after we resolve taste and odor concerns for the Lehigh source water. This is a picture of the influent channel what would be required for the modifications, as I mentioned, would be to change the cross-section and the slope of this channel so that the influent flow has a higher velocity so that debris, settlement, grit, it doesn't settle out of the channel. And then, as you can see, it's a confined space. And to shut a channel down is a major endeavor for the plan, and then to get in there and remove the material is problematic. Okay, so with that, we'll get into wastewater projects. The 30 water, starting with the annual projects, like the water side, I have a breakdown on the following slide that shows what the annual projects are comprised of. We have annual indenture report improvements. That's driven by the Arcadis report, like the water side, and that's mostly structural. Master plan studies, one every 5 years. We're coming around to next year, needing to update the Klein's Island master plan. Manhole inspection and sealing program. This project is to inspect over 7,200 manholes over a 10-year period. And this is part of the city's SRP, source reduction plan. Phil might be able to give you a little bit more detail on this one.
Yeah, give us like 20 minutes, so I'll talk.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, it's a 10-year project right now we're going through the inspection phase, and that will scope out next year's rehab project. And then next year's inspection of however many manholes, 720 and change, will scope out the following year's rehab project and so on for 10 years. It's primarily to stop inflow, the top 3 feet of the manhole, replacing frames and covers, like that sort of work. So Arcadis is currently in the inspection phase of that. We have Act 537 alternative analysis. And the last two there, and the miscellaneous Act 537 planning, that funding will wrap up the end of 2025, I believe, once Act 537 is submitted and hopefully approved. I think we're showing that funded till 2025.
Correct, yes.
Just quick.
Yes.
The manhole inspection and sealing, we're gonna talk later on in the agenda about the Trout Creek. Is that money included in this estimate on the sheet?
Yeah, the Trout Creek manholes, they were added, I believe.
Yeah, I'll get into it, but yes, there's money in this year's budget still for this work that's being proposed.
Yeah, that's an additional, what, 1,800 manholes? This is a breakdown of the annual projects. They're very similar to the water side. And here is a list of the large projects, starting with the substation. That is in design right now in final design to replace substation number 1. We were almost ready to go to bid on that project. Probably in September, we will advertise that project for bid. So that's driven by the master plan. That's a very important project to get done before all these capacity enhancement projects are ready to go. And along those lines, there's 3 wet weather capacity enhancement projects on this list. You'll see an upgrade of the main and auxiliary pump station, an upgrade of the intermediate pump station, and what we call a tertiary bypass. So those projects are all driven by regulatory, and they will increase the wet weather treatment capacity at the plant to 100 MGD at a minimum. Along here, we have the boiler replacement project that will finish next year to replace the digester boilers and digester and dewatering building HVAC equipment. And we have an ionized source reduction plan. This is basically to grout and line sewer collection mains in the city as part of the city's source reduction plan. The city drafted their source reduction plan, and it identifies a 10-year period for going into the system and rehabbing the pipes. I don't know, Philip, you're gonna talk about this one too.
No, I have to say that the manholes is more inflow focused, and then this S26 is more infiltration focused, the actual pipe itself. So that's a distinction.
And here's a new project on the wastewater side. This is replacement of two twin 6-inch cast iron sludge lines from the primary clarifier pump station to the anaerobic digesters. What the problem is, these 6-inch old cast iron mains, they get blocked with grease and debris. The mains are all what we call tuberculated. The cast iron, it increases the friction of the substance going through the line, and it causes backups, and then operations has to go in and unclog the lines. So this is actually a master plan project as well. I didn't list master plan there, but it is project number 3 in the master plan, and it replaces the two 6-inch lines. They're each 1,500 feet long with 8-inch glass line ductile iron pipe, and that will help us pump a thicker sludge and basically optimize the capacity of the anaerobic digesters. Because right now we have to pump a thinner sludge just so we can get it through the pipes, and we're consuming excess volume in the digesters by doing that. So this will optimize plant operations. So that's a new project. Here's a picture of the substation and the primary switchgear that are being replaced as part of the substation number 1 replacement project. In the project to the left, we're locating the new substation just to the left of there. And this is a shot of the main pump station and the auxiliary pump station. This is part of the wet weather capacity enhancement program, and these pumps are going to be, it's like a combination of motor replacements and pump replacements. And the main pumps, we're going to replace those pumps right there with vertical turbine pumps. That will eliminate the need for a problematic vacuum priming system that the operators have to operate right now, and it will definitely optimize that station and increase the capacity as well. Here's a picture of the intermediate pump station. You can see the building. It's located between the trickling filter towers in the left picture there, and the covered primary clarifier tanks to the right of the building. And what's happening in there as part of the wet weather capacity enhancement program is a combination of VFD replacement and pump motor replacement. Part of the problem now is that at over 84 MGD, the VFDs overheat. So we can't convey more out of that station. We have to put new VFDs and then some upsizing of motors to allow us to convey a minimum of 100 MGD to the trickling filter towers. Here's a picture of the boiler project. These boilers are going to be replaced. The picture on the left is downstairs below a causeway that's between the anaerobic digesters and the dewatering building. The replacement boilers will be located at grade. The one on the right is boiler for building heat. Those 3 will be consolidated into 2 boilers to be replaced in a building, an at-grade building addition. That project will be completed next year. It's in construction right now. And now we're going to get into the fun stuff, the financials, and this is where I turn it over to Ed.
Yeah, so when I first started to look at that, all I could think about is look at that big number. And that's 192 million of capital spending over the 5-year period. You could see the breakout between water of almost 118 million and wastewater 73 million plus. And we picked up about 50% of the administration projects, which we'll cover in 2 more weeks, that the city pays for out of operating cash. So that's quite a big number of expenditures, especially when you look back over the years, at the levels of spending. So we're top of the scales here on this one. In terms of where we're getting money from to pay for, so you between the operating revenues, and we'll get into the cash flows, you almost got $97 million of it. So actually a little bit less than half coming from operating and reserve. There were 8 RPA funding from the city will be $6.2 million. The city has agreed to reimburse us for some of the Act 537 plan development worth $600,000. And as Liesl had mentioned, the lead service line replacement grants, we assumed that we would be 60% funded, and that equals 33 million. And that would leave us with 55 million plus to cover the difference in terms of borrowing to get to the $192 million usage. And she had mentioned conservative. When I first started this, I was really conservative. And I came up with $88 million of borrowing without the 33 million, and I had trouble moving on from that. So in terms of what projects we're going to be borrowing, this will be.
Sean had asked for comment.
Yep, I didn't want to, excuse me, interrupt the flow. Could we go back to the last slide really quickly? In terms of the Allentown's ARPA funding, the ARPA grants, 2 questions. One, has that been voted on by Allentown City Council and approved in terms of the allocation to us?
That has already been approved by the city. So this is what is remaining.
Okay. And then my second question related to that, because I manage it for Easton, the ARPA funding. We're aware that there's a deadline on that funding's usage, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So projects that we're going to borrow will be in the neighborhood of $21.6 million on the lead service line replacement. Again, that's outside of the grants. So with 33 million in grants, you're going to have almost $22 million of money that we will have to borrow to cover the $55 million project spending. The PFAS side, we're going to borrow the $10 million in water main replacements, $11.7 million. And then as you saw the picture of the wet weather capacity enhancement projects, we will need to borrow $12 million for that. That will give us a total borrowing of about $55.4 million for this capital plan.
And where did these grants come from?
The grants, the $33 million, we applied, I'm trying to remember what the org was for that. It's all handled through PIMVest, and it wasn't
but it's the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act funding that came from federal government to PIMVest specifically for lead service line replacement program. They also, the IIJA, it's called, they also have some funding specific for PFAS treatment. So we'll be applying for grant funding.
So this is federal money.
It's federal money, yeah. Federal money.
Thank you. Okay.
I do want to just make a comment about the lead service line replacements where we're going to be actively pursuing the grant funding for it. We're assuming 60% could be grant funded. However, I think I think where we have some wiggle room is really in looking at the new requirements for lead service line replacement. We're trying to maximize what we get from the grant program. If we are not successful in getting grants, we may not to be as aggressive in our replacement program, depending on what the EPA requirements are for the program. So I think we have some wiggle room there to ratchet that program down if we don't get all the grants that we need.
Is there any time constraint on this, in terms of replacing these lead lines?
Well, there's really two time constraints that we're thinking of. Number one is when the grants are available. So the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act funding goes through 2026 or 2027. So that's why we have, if you see in the plan, we have a big bubble of lead service line replacements for those first 3 years of the plan to try to maximize getting the grants for the project. So that's one piece of the timing. The other piece is really what the EPA requirements are. We're expecting to have a new rule published by the end of this year that might guide our thinking about that. But generally, EPA has been looking out more.
So EPA is
the driver.
Thank you.
So this is the cash flows. I'll try to go through this without ad nauseum detail. We did budget our plan into this 2.5% normal increase in rates and a 2.2% CPI that's tied to the rate schedule. So that's a 4.7 increase on a year-to-year basis for operating revenues. Did not build any volumes in, did not want to be fooled by any volume increases coming into play. So that's also staying steady with what we've done in the past. On operating expenses, we used a 3.0% inflation rate. I guess that's kind of where the experts say it's going to be anyway, somewhere in that neighborhood, depending on what plays out. Debt service is currently at, you see the 15.6 million, 16 million. As we talked about before, that might change a little bit and come down as we do the refinancing, but right now it's where it is right now. You can see what borrowing $55 million does to debt service, taking it from almost 600,000 to almost $3.6 million of additional debt service. We did talk about the grants, and you can see the numbers at 10,850, the 10 million and 10 million are really related to the lead service line replacement, and we got some money in 2024 to apply to that as well, $3.3 million. You can see the capital expenditures are big, $192 million over the 5-year period. And there is the $55 million of debt that we're taking on. So we talked about the 4.7%. Actually, cash comes in at 233 days. It kind of drops a little bit through the years, but you're still, the lowest it gets to is 198, which is above our minimum threshold of 180. So we're staying whole with respect to days cash on hand. And the debt service coverage ratio, despite borrowing the $55 million, does not look all as bad as you would think, and certainly above the 1.20, and actually even in year 5 we get above 2, and actually year 4 too. So not bad in terms of debt service after borrowing that much money.
What's the term of the debt? Or term of the debt?
We use 30 years on it.
Yeah.
I have a question. So in the rates, like as we finish some of these capital projects from the lease that were required for the city, isn't there also an adjustment to the rates for the CapEx?
For the CCRC portion?
Yeah,
Yes.
so is that tracked in here too, or not?
That's tracked in there as well, yes.
So that's part of the 4.7%?
That's part of it.
All right, thanks.
Actually, we're going to answer that on the next slide, the rate slide that I did.
Yeah, she can talk about the rates.
No, it's good. Leave it.
I thought maybe that was some found money out there.
I wish.
Yeah.
Good on this one?
I think I'm done on this one. Any questions?
So the rate piece is kind of where we land with all of this. What does it mean for the customer? And just to get into, I think your question, Jeff, the customer rate is assumed, the regular city customer rate is assumed to increase by the 4.7% annually. That's the lease formula of CPI plus 2.5%. But there are additional charges on top of that for capital cost recovery for these projects, and some of them, like PFAS, may be subject to change of law type fee. Those are components of the lease agreement with Allentown. So putting both of those pieces together, we come up with a total rate impact for the city customers of 6 to 10% per year. That's pretty high. It's what we're seeing across the nation. It's, you know, water and sewer rates outpacing inflation by a significant degree. What that means in terms of impact to the customer, 2023 current bill for an average customer is about $808 per year. That's based on a customer who uses 13,000 gallons per quarter, which is the average in Allentown. The 2028 estimated average residential bill will go up to a little over $1,200 a year. And this does not include the 537 projects. Just want to say that again, because that is another big important component that hasn't been added to this plan. So so it's a lot, and it makes the pursuit of grants much more important and you know, really a priority for us.
I mean, even though the numbers are going up, in 2023, there are lots of people in the, I'd say in the region, not the immediate area, that might be paying $800 per year just for water, or $800 just for sewer. But the combined bill of $800 is still very reasonable for the Lehigh Valley.
Lisa, just to follow up on that, your point about grants, and I think this was asked in a prior meeting, so excuse my kind of ignorance, but does the LCA have a designated kind of grant administrator, or is it all hands on deck approach in terms of grant writing and seeking these opportunities?
We do not have a grant writer. We are going into budget season, however, so it's a time to think about it. Now, when we're pursuing grants, we're handling it mostly internally, but we did have some help from the design engineer for the lead service line project. So just sort of walking us through the process with Penvest. We've done Penvest now a few times, so generally speaking, we understand what's involved with that, and Tom has good back experience on that piece of it. We also, we didn't capture this here at all, but we also have some outstanding grant applications in with the Department of Community and Economic Development, or the H2O PA grant program that we talked about several months ago. Actually, it was December of 2022. We're still waiting to hear results of that. The one that applies to this capital plan is a $10 or $11 million grant we applied for the I&I source reduction program. So if we're successful in getting that grant, then those numbers come down again. For that grant program, Sean, we did have some outside help, just navigating the process and helping us collect support letters and that sort of thing. So.
Thank you.
So Lisa, just to add to that, so the H2O grants were supposed to be decisions made in July. Because of the budget impasse in Harrisburg, they got booted to September, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
So hopefully next month we'll get it.
Yeah, and we had tremendous support from local organizations, legislators, the county, the city, everyone we could think of, we asked and got really strong support for. Whether that translates into a grant award or not, I'm not sure. So we'll keep beating the bushes for those kinds of programs.
Might there be other organizations that have access to different grants that we can't access that could work on our behalf?
Yeah, so the person that we used, that we hired to help us with the DCED grants, the H2OPA grants. That's her job, is of funding program coordinator, I think that's her title or something along those lines. So she's got access to all the grant programs that or other funding opportunities that relate to water and sewer. And we still have a relationship with that firm. So they're continuing to look for us. Okay. So just a recap of the plan, kind of going back to where we started. Yes, the capital investments are more than doubling from the prior plan. Those increases are driven primarily by regulatory changes, as well as the wet weather challenges on the regional sewer system. With the new borrowing, I think Ed's financial picture looked strong, that we're still able to maintain our financial targets. The downside is the rate impact to the customer is pretty significant. 6 to 10% per year is significant. You know, that's why, again, it's important for us to really prioritize looking for grant funding where it's available. And grant funding would be applied directly to those projects that have great impact. So try to manage that. And the last piece is about the future Regional Act 537 plan, that future plans will incorporate those projects as well. So look for, again, another increase in what the plan looks like next year. We'll also have some continuing public dialogue and board presentation about the Act 537 and the decisions that are being made and the financial impact of those. So I don't have to wait a year to get that information.
As a comment, I'm fascinated where this money comes from. You talk about grants, these are primarily government grants, state or federal, I'm assuming. And I don't know where the sources of those grants are in the state governmental structure and the federal structure, but it seems like such a mishmash of dollars and cents to essentially do local projects.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the big programs that are available now through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, that's all getting funneled through PennVest. So since we've learned how to navigate PennVest, we can continue to go through it that way. But yeah, I think we're going to continue to kind of keep that flexibility and look out where there is available funding. The other thing too, we did a recent call. This isn't going to support us with grant funding, but we did a recent call with EPA and the WIFIA program, which is the water infrastructure financing program that's out there. That is going to be absolutely a mix in the portfolio related to the 537 plan, where PennVest does level financing over 20 years at 1%. It's good. But the WIFIA program has the ability to wrap around longer term, more flexible terms. So you could kind of package your financing together to get the best rate impact that you're looking for.
So along those lines, Ed, are there any of the bonds or anything out there that might be callable, refundable, whatever the term is, that might help the situation?
Yeah, actually, that's what we're working on now.
Oh, okay.
So if you remember back in 2020, we did the redo on the concession agreement. To do that, we had to retire 51% of the tax exempt debt, and we had to replace it with taxable. Now they're not callable for a couple of years, but the remaining 49% gets callable in September. So, and that's what we're looking at now to refinance. At this point in time, we're still seeing a net present value savings of almost $7 million to do that. So I'm trying to get my butt in gear to get it done on time. So
Is that because long-term rates have stayed so low?
actually, yes. It's
goofy, yeah.
kind of goofy in a way because inflation went up a little bit according to expectations, yet the bond yields came down.
Yeah, the short-term rates are up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Looks like
at this point in time, what's callable, we're trying to get at, like right now, so.
Thanks.
So again, just to give us a point in time here, we presented now the draft plan for the Allentown division, and we're gonna do this all over again next time in 2 weeks for the suburban division and take a look at what that plan looks like. And then that starts the public comment period. And then we'll be back in October with any changes, share with you any public comment that we do receive, and move on. And also at the same time, we'll be beginning to talk about budget in September, October.
You do expect public comment.
Somewhat, but I mean, honestly, in the past, the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission has probably done a fairly thorough review, and their comments are more about consistency with their regional comprehensive plan, which our projects typically are. The county, we don't usually receive formal comment, maybe some questions. City of Allentown certainly might have some comments and questions. But yeah, I don't know what else to expect.
Good.
Yeah. It's the end of our presentation.
I think it would be appropriate, set up some meetings with some of the local leaders to talk about the rate impacts and all we're doing to try and minimize the impact on our customers.
I mean, overall, the stakeholder outreach that we're doing for the Act 537 projects kind of get at those topics as well. I am meeting, I should have mentioned that in the context, next week with the county commissioners. They've asked for me to come and give a little presentation of where we are. We chose this time of year to coincide with the capital plan being available. So I'll certainly be sharing with the county commissioners next week for more of that kind of context.
And at some point in time, we'll be talking about our capability of doing all this work in this amount of time. I come in 2 weeks from now.
It'll be part of the budget discussion.
All right. That's it, right? Okay. All right, moving on then, we have a topic under water. It's the North Whitehall meter replacement. Seeking approval is a purple document within our board packet and digital board packet pages 75 and 77.
Amy Kunkel of Capital Works is going to present this project, which is for the replacement of over 600 meters in our North Whitehall division.
Okay. So, yeah, this year's project is focusing on the North Whitehall division that has had issues with manganese in the system due to the well sources and problems from that manganese precipitating into the water. We have since removed those wells as sources. We get our water now for that system from Northampton Borough Municipal Authority. And so this project is looking at replacing the remaining positive displacement type meters that have moving parts that could be compromised by the manganese buildup. Replacing them with iPearl meters, which is the standard type of meter that we use now. It doesn't have the internal parts, moving parts in them. There's 616 meters. Almost all of them are residential size meters. There's 2 meters in that. So we got a price through Foreign Maine through the Coast Guard program for replacing those meters. Price of $243,905. So that, in addition to incidental incidental and staff cost takes it up to the 283,905. That then should be good. It also kind of it's part of a larger project. I know, I think on this year's main replacement, North White Health Division started there, create a lot of the mains. So it kind of ties in with that project as far as getting that system cleaned up. So that's what I'm asking for, a motion to approve that cost to have the meters replaced.
We only have one bid on this.
Yeah, it's through, Core and they're the rep in this area, like you pretty much have to get our meters from them. They're on the, as Amy mentioned, they're in the CoStar's program, they're a registered CoStar vendor. So it's more or less like a pre-negotiated price that municipalities can take advantage of the CoStar's program. And if we would put it out to bid, they would be the only bidder.
Since the wells have been eliminated as sources of water, so presumably the buildup won't be a continual thing. You know, how long do we expect the new water meters, should this be approved? How long do we expect their life to be typically?
The meters have a 20-year life.
20-year life.
I move we approve this. Authorization for 283,000. Second it.
Catch who seconded, was it Barbara?
I'm here.
Oh, here, okay, here. So motion made by Linda and seconded by Amir. To approve the capital project authorization for the North Whitehall meter replacement project. For a total of $283,905. It includes contract award with Core and Main. For a contract price of $243,905. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much, Amy. All right, next on the agenda is under wastewater. We have two projects. The first one is sanitary sewer collection system, City of Allentown manhole inspection, seeking approval, salmon colored document in our board package, and digital pages 78 to 84.
Okay, Phil will handle this one.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. And what we're going to talk about today is an additional request for the City of Allentown manhole inspection program. Before we get into the details, I just want to back up for a second. And there's two main reasons why we're under 537. One's inflow, one's infiltration. So the infiltration piece, as I mentioned a little bit ago, is being handled by that project, that I&I project that Chuck touched on. That's going to tackle the specific pipe itself to reduce infiltration. The other side of the coin is inflow, and one way to address an inflow aggressively is to inspect every single public manhole. That's the data clearly indicated in 2021 that the entire system suffers from inflow problems, which causes the peak problems, which causes outfall of O3 to be activated. So the board authorized the first round of inspections for the city in December of 22. Arcadis was authorized to handle that. Since December and up to now, Arcadis has gone through about half of those authorizations. They were authorized to do about 900, or about 500 of the way done. the meantime, they created this protocol within a piece of software to assist the investigation in the field. So it's all preloaded into a tablet, and it's just a yes/no decision tree. So the answer is given as the inspection occurs. The preferred rehab method is determined in the field based on the questions that are answered. So it's a pretty slick protocol that was developed. And it's specific just for the Allentown system currently. So that's been completed, implemented. Again, they're about 500 of the way done so far. And the prior authorization was spread out through the system. It wasn't a clear basin as this authorization request is going to be for. So that's a rough what's been happening since December. And the intent is to complete that first authorization by this fall. And then we're going to get into the rehab portion of the program in 2024. So as a reminder, we're going to do inspection, and then those inspections are going to spill over to the rehab, and it's going to keep on repeating that pattern: inspection, rehab, inspection, rehab. What also has transpired since December was the modeling has come into focus, and this is not a surprise because this was identified about 30 years ago. This basin, the Trout Creek Basin, is the one basin that the city possesses that is has been known to be a problem since the 90s, and it was identified then, and it was identified again during the AO era, and now they've identified again. So this is the third time where this has come up. The problem is that the interceptor is undersized to handle peak flow events. So in order to make sure, the alternative is to parallel that, which we don't want to do. We want to focus on which DEP doesn't want us to do. We want us to focus on eliminating the inflow. In order to do that, you have to find where the inflow is coming from, which we're assuming it's all the manholes. So we have to inspect all the manholes and then come up with the appropriate rehab. So that's why this basin is being, that's why this laser focused on this basin. Remember, we had a meeting with DEP in May of 23 where this topic came up, and they are expecting a detailed description of how we're going to address this basin particularly. The city has one of these hot basins, and every signatory has a basin that DEP is aware of that has inflow problems. So this happens to be the city's basin. So again, DEP is expecting a detailed description of how we're going to tackle this. In order to help with that description, we want to inspect every single manhole within that basin. It's about 1,800 manholes. So again, it's going to follow the same protocol that's been developed. So at the end of the day, we'll have 900 manholes inspected, plus these additional 1,800. So that'll be about 2,700 manholes will be inspected by springtime of next year. The city has about 7,200 manholes. The entire system has 25,000 manholes. The tricky part is we really want to standardize these inspections, and we're slowly making progress on that. Some of the signatories prefer their own method, but they are realizing that this protocol has been developed. It's the output is just an Excel sheet that can be used to prepare the rehab documents. So we've done all the legwork for the signatories. Some of them have jumped on board. They want to follow Arcadis in the field next month. And we're working on the other signatories. So again, we really want to standardize this. We're really driving home, which I think most of the signatories understand, is that all the manholes need to be inspected at a minimum. Again, this is going to be a 10-year. The original intent was a 10-year program to do this inspection. So we'll see you know, if that 10 years holds up, or if it's sped up or slowed down. And eventually, if staffing allows, we would like to do this in-house. Again, if staffing allows in the future, but now with this accelerated time frame by DEP, we have to continue with the same approach as we did last time. So that's a high level overview. Again, the rehab methods for the manhole inspections are not clearly identified yet. We're gonna work on that in the fourth quarter. And then the bid package for the first rehab will be next year. Just two side notes. You know, one of the issues that is, it's not raised a lot during the KISS meetings, but you know, we do the rehab of the manhole. We want the rehab to last. We don't want it to be, you know, negated within a year. And that's a discussion that we have to have with the staff about ensuring that. I know Jason Peters has raised concerns about other utilities entering our manholes. And then, you know, perhaps disturbing what has been rehabbed. So all those issues are still on the table, but we'll work through that. So again, the inspection is step one, so that's what this is for. The last side note is my vision is to create this I&I rehab database for the entire KISS system. So we know exactly what every signatory is doing and when they're doing it and where they're doing it. So a lot of our GIS team has created, you know, browser-based apps that are already, you know, all the inspection data is right via browser. So that's my intent is to create this big database of all the rehab work that's been done throughout the entire system, not just, you know, not just the city. So that's a very high level overview of what's being requested. The specifics are, again, it would be Arcadis doing the actual inspections, continuation of the services from December. They're averaging anywhere from 25 to 30 manholes a day. Again, they're not doing the entire manhole. They're focused on the top 2 to 3 feet. That's where the inflow is coming in. So they have a system down now that is aiding their, you know, the speed to occur. And again, some other signatories have jumped on. So if authorized, this work would continue, or this work would be starting immediately, and it would go until we're thinking the first quarter of 24. But again, that could change depending on if they're able to keep the pace. And then again, the result of this is going to be fed into the description for DEP, the 537. So the request is for 267 for Arcadis, 267,000 for Arcadis for professional services, and the CPA is 292,000. Brian, one note about financing and how's this being paid for in 23. We had money set aside for that first authorization, and we also had money set aside this year to do some significant interceptor rehab work that has not started yet. Some of the inspections have occurred for the interceptors, but the actual rehab has not. So there's money available in 23 for this additional authorization. So I just wanted to make note of that.
Any more questions?
Quick question, so the LCA staff go out and make sure the manholes aren't paved over, there's no bolt issues, so that they can be ready to be opened and done efficiently by Arcadis. They're not wasting time opening the manhole.
Yes, as far as the Arcadis and LCA staff are working hand in hand, so there's no issues there. If there are, they take care of it without letting me know.
Okay, good.
Just a quick question. So when they pop the manhole, what are they looking, just out of curiosity, what are they looking at?
Let's see if how many frame rings have been installed, if there's any evidence of water getting in, you know, visual evidence. is the manhole here and is the street here?
Okay.
So then, obviously water just pours in.
Yeah.
Stuff like that is those, but the decision tree is long. There's like, I don't know how many questions are, but it's yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, and you need to get your answer for the rehab. That took about 3 to 4 months to come up with that protocol, but it's been tested and it appears to be working.
Thank you.
Around how many, can you tell of the 500 that have been done, about how many have to be rehabbed?
Yeah, don't quote me on this, but anywhere between 50-80% is what I think I heard. So it's varying degrees of rehab, right? It's not, obviously, we're not replacing the whole manhole, it's just you swap out the framing cover, put an addition to hold it back. Those are the.
So something has to be done to about 50% of what they've inspected so far.
Roughly 50%. Again, so then the 2024 will be the first rehab project.
Any other questions on the board? The protocol that has been established using the tablet, is that proprietary? Are we locked into Arcadis, or is that something that we're going to be able to do on our own if we do get additional manpower to do it?
It's not locked into Arcadis. We're using a third party to help us facilitate the data entry in the field. But the protocol is ours. And it's ours to use. And if staffing becomes available for in-house inspections, obviously that's the preferred method.
And you mentioned something about, Jason was concerned about others entering our manholes.
Now,
What
I know,
circumstances would that be?
Jason, like the people entering for survey reasons or UGI entering.
Right, during other project type work that maybe another stakeholder in right away is conducting, a lot of times it's commonplace for somebody to open a manhole to look at the elevation, the height of where the underground facilities may be located, so they'll be opening the manhole, measuring down to actually see the depth of the sanitary sewer main as they're doing work, and they're going to say excavate over top of that by doing a perpendicular crossing. They know that elevation and they know where our system would be. When they do that, you kind of, anything that we may have installed to watertight or make our framing cover more waterproof may be undone at that point. There's different types of means and methods on waterproofing the framing cover. I know one of them was a grease type substance, water soluble grease type substance that could provide a waterproofing, but once you open up that lid, it's now not waterproof anymore. So there's a lot of other people out there besides the facility owners opening up those structures.
Given that, is there a better way of sealing it with something else that wouldn't be compromised?
Right. There definitely, most certainly is. There's a gasketed, as what in the industry calls a dish. We have a lot of them out on our system already. Just means and methods of when we sit the frame, the cover back into the frame. There's different things that can be done.
So the 2024 rehab project is going to be a much smaller, I guess you can call it a pilot, to make sure that the rehab that we're proposing is the correct rehab, and then we have to watch what we just got done talking about to make sure no one's compromising what we just did. And that's the tricky part.
Okay. All right, then, any other questions by board members? Anybody else? We have before us a capital project authorization, Allentown Division 2023. Manhole inspections, specifically, this is for the Trout Creek Interceptor Basin, for a total amount of $292,000. That includes a professional services authorization to Arcadis for inspection services totaling $267,000. This is amendment number 2 to an existing order we have with Arcadis, and specifically for Trout Creek Interceptor. Right. We need a motion in a second.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion to approve.
Okay, Mark will give it to you, and Linda seconded that. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. All right, next on the agenda under wastewater. Heidelberg Heights Sanitary Sewer Consent Order and Agreement seeking approval. Gray documents in our board package, digital board package pages 85 to 87.
Okay, Jason Peters of Capital Works is going to present this one, which is the final annual replacement project for the sanitary sewer mains and laterals. If you recall, we have a consent order and agreement with DEP. We have a corrective action plan that's part of that consent order, and it requires us to replace all the original vitrified clay pipe, public side, main and laterals with new PVC pipe. So I'll let Jason explain the details more of this project. So Jason?
Thanks, Chuck. And thank you, Brian and board. Like Chuck has alluded to, this is year number 5 of construction. You guys have been through this 4 times already. DEP consent order and agreement, part of the correction action plan. What we're looking for is to finalize with this last project, as we're calling phase 5, is approximately 1,300 lineal feet of still outstanding 8-inch vitrified clay pipe and 10 residential sewer laterals to complete the public portion of all the sewer system throughout the Heidelberg Heights sewer system. Okay. Along with that type of work, every manhole that we get to, we're going to put a new frame and cover. We're also going to waterproof that outside cone of that manhole. We're going to seal it up, do a what they call a rapid seal wrapper over there, and then before backfilling and sealing off the road itself as well. The funding source for this particular project is the LCA Suburban Division, but one thing I wanted to highlight with this particular project, unlike what we have had in the past 4 years or 4 construction cycles, the Capital Works Department reached out. We were able to get a local share account grant fund for approximately $75,000 for this particular project. That'll go towards the financial efforts to pay for this project. During the bidding phase of this portion, we added a total of 7 bidders for this particular project. Oraso Excavation Inc. was the current low bidder. They've done work for us on these particular projects in the past. They meet all our standards. They've done excellent work, not only for the prior year project work, but also for the I-78 water crossing that was done this prior year. So the Capital Works Department recommends award for the construction phase of this project to Oraso. Professional services, we're looking to have Keystone Consulting Engineers provide full-time inspection out on the project, just as we've done in prior years as well. And for as far as the project schedule goes, once obtaining board authorization, hopefully here at today's meeting, we'll wrap up construction by the end of the year. So what we're looking for the board to approve is the capital project authorization for general construction to Oraso Excavating for $393,750. Construction inspection services to Keystone Consulting Engineers for $48,000. Making the total for the capital project authorization $471,750.
Does that total include the 75,000 grant money that you said you picked up?
It's not netted out, no.
It's not netted out.
Correct.
Okay, so it's really, technically, we're only gonna be on the line for 400,000.
Yep, that's correct. What a bargain, right?
Every little bit counts. Right?
It's like,
I wanted to just make a technical comment that the professional services authorization form inadvertently got missed from the packet. So the authorization based on the chart on the front is will be sufficient, but the form will certainly complete do all the right record keeping.
So this is. When this work is done at the end of this year, our 5 years of replacing the mains. Have we completed, will we have completed the consent order agreement, or is there more to it that is required before we fully satisfy? Consent order?
We'll be able to allude a little bit more onto the detail here. There's a public portion that we must do as far as the consent order and agreement, but also a private portion that we must get into, and that'll be seeking more board authorizations at a later time for that.
Yeah,
There's a component to that as well.
we're going to have to see what our I and I looks like when we address all the public side. I suspect there'll be repairs required on the private side, such as some pump disconnections, like floor drains, building drains. Because I quite frankly, I don't think we're gonna capture all the I and I with this project. So we're going to have to address the private side. We've already started down that path. The township did adopt an ordinance in 2019, giving us the authority to inspect the home plumbing and do enforcements to remove illegal connections. So we'll be getting into that next year, but our consent order agreement does require that we look into the private side and get rid of all illegal connections. So no, to answer to your question, we won't be done with the consent order agreement yet. And hopefully that will go away when we show that the plant has operated without any excessive flows beyond what's permitted. Or any overflows, any bypasses, that sort of thing. So that's what we're looking for.
We've done 4 years of construction work already, still haven't. So
We've reduced the peaks and maybe Andrew can comment on this a little bit more. I think we've reduced like the duration of the peak flows.
Yeah, I would definitely say that's accurate. As far as total volume bypass, it's definitely down over the years. Even the number of events, we're still not there yet, but it has greatly improved.
okay, so they haven't done the smoke tests and things like that in the house.
We actually did. We hired Keystone Consulting Engineers and they did that. And they found some problems, but I guess not as many as I had anticipated.
Yeah, from the smokes testing standpoint, they did start some home inspections, got about, I want to say somewhere between 40 to 50% compliance to get into homes and do inspections. But there was little evidence from the smoke testing standpoint found out there.
Okay. So we have any questions, any other questions by the board members? All right, we have before us a capital project authorization construction phase request for $471,750. Suburban Division Heidelberg Heights Sanitary Sewer Rehabilitation Project, Phase 5. The capital project authorization includes a construction contract with Barrasso Excavation, $393,750, and a professional services authorization with Keystone Consulting Engineers for $48,000. Motion second.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Sean.
Here, made the motion, seconded by Sean.
Sean did it.
The reverse, I did it and Amir seconded.
Sean did it.
Sean did it, all right.
Remember me.
We're second, all right. We'll tough that. Raise hands. All right, motion made and seconded. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Jason, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, we have the monthly project updates and information items. We're run at the first board meeting of each month. Digital board package, pages 88 to 95. Included in our packet.
Yeah. All right, I'll just give you a couple of highlights. For the next meeting, the big highlight is the Suburban Division Capital Plan. Since we did Allentown today, we'll do the Suburban one at the next meeting. We also have an updated resolution we're gonna ask for approval on related to authorized signatures for bank transactions, that sort of thing. We'll bring that to you next time. We also have, actually, Phil, I meant to ask you this before the meeting. Are we doing the KISS final alternatives analysis presentation?
Yes, signatories heard it on Thursday, so yes,
Okay.
you'll hear it on 20th.
Okay, so that should be interesting to hear how far we've come with the engineering analysis of the alternatives for the Pines Island Sewer System Act 537. There are a number of updates in the project update section, so happy to answer any questions folks may have about any of those. And just wanted to highlight one thing on the open project list that on the second page of the listing, about right in the middle, there's a project called KISS Act 537 Planning, Financial and Institutional Evaluation Phase 1. That was completed last time we heard the presentation, so that will come off the list next time. Any questions about any of the projects or the project updates?
Hearing none. Move on to staff comments.
I just have one brief comment, which is to acknowledge that last week LCA celebrated its 10-year anniversary of operating under the lease agreement in the city of Allentown. It's been quite a interesting, challenging, and rewarding experience over the last 10 years. And I just wanted to thank the board for support along the way and helping us navigate some of these very challenging times. The staff is doing a great job. That's all I have.
Right, solicitor comments.
We don't have any comments, but I'm looking forward to the article in the Municipal Authorities Association monthly magazine about a crocodile that was found.
Yeah, I saw that.
And that Susan Sampson apparently wrote, so I have it on my bedstand and watch it.
I have a question about that. There were some pictures at the end of, I remember a deer, maybe were those things in the sewer plant? No.
Inside the sewer plant grounds, not.
Oh, okay, but they didn't. I thought, whoa.
No, we get quite the array of animals at the plant, so.
Right.
Important clarification.
Okay. Any public comments on any topics whatsoever?
No, thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Jay. All right, board comments?
I have a comment. It's too cold in here.
Hey, Jay, brought his-
Fellow in here with his jacket on.
I want to bring up mine.
Yeah, I mean, obviously to keep us awake, I'm assuming is why. But having been a former HVAC guy, we really have a crank.
You can pick one.
You know, an HVAC, I mean, you're cold, I'm fine. I feel
That was
fine.
the statement when the jacket was on.
Okay, anything further from the board? Okay, at this time, we're going to adjourn this meeting. We will have an executive session following this, and we'll do that at, make it 1:45. And for the first purpose of discussing personnel issues. Thank you very much. Board members, you should have the Zoom information for the executive session in your emails. Thank you, everybody.